Hello, I am Baphometal, and I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's episode of Secular Soapbox. We're very excited for today's guest. His name is Micah Losh, and he is the author of the book Mentally Deceased. Micah is a cult survivor and describes himself as an atheist, anarchist, artist, contrarian, and iconoclast. Please feel free to interact with us in the chat and give this video a thumbs up. Also, if you like what we do here on Skeptic Haven, please consider subscribing to our channel so you don't miss out on all of our awesome content. Let's get started. What's up? Hi, Stacy.
Hi.
Hi, Micah.
Hi, Micah.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah,
I always get, a little bit of anxiety before I talk to people, but I'm glad to be here. Thanks. I really appreciate it.
No problem. I actually listened to one of your interviews just from a couple weeks ago on someone else's channel. So I feel like I kind of know a little bit about you, but I'm really looking forward for you introducing yourself to our audience and sharing your story and talking about your book and what you've been through. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Beth, do you want to get started?
Yeah, we can start. I mean, we would like to get to know you a little more. So if you want to start with maybe some of your background, your upbringing. I know you were indoctrinated as you were part of a cult, Jehovah's Witness. So did you grow up in that religion, or was it more towards your, I guess, teenager or adult years?
So I was born in, my parents converted before I was born, I believe in the late 70s, but I don't know. I can't ask now. They both kind of withdrew from their sides of the family. Admittedly, my dad's side had some really, really pretty bad people. So, I mean, I understand, but so I really just had my parents and everyone at the Kingdom Hall.
Mm-hmm.
And really, I mean, when you're in a cult, you're kept so busy. It's perpetual deja vu. And then when I was 13, my dad died. And that was really difficult because, you would hear stories, maybe somehow Jehovah God would move something, and like the only example I can think of is after my dad died, but they needed sand on an island, and they said there was a hurricane and all this sand got blown into the island. Now, they never addressed that people died in the storm, but it was just that, Jehovah interacted for their construction work. But I remember, because my dad was on chemo for about a year, and I really tried to study and, be the best Jehovah's Witness. And I had a lot of really deep conversations with God. And, I begged him, I pleaded, I told him I needed my dad. Yeah. And I watched my dad deteriorate. But when he died, it really, I don't want to say surprised, but, I expected a miracle, even though I was told they usually didn't happen.
Right.
I had that expectation. And that was probably when my faith really, just a huge hole was blown into it. Mm-hmm. And I remained because I thought I could get my father back, through the resurrection after Armageddon.
Mm.
But I really began to sense a divide in me and the congregation. And it was denied when I would bring it up to elders, to my mother, or excused. And one of the things I've learned is cults want their members to be walking, talking advertisements. And I was not that. I was depressed. And of course, in the late 90s, they didn't know antidepressants can create suicidal ideation.
Right.
So I had these thoughts of killing myself, and I thought it was part of my, evil, diseased mind. And I just I wasn't really shunned, but like soft shunned. It wasn't mandated, but everyone began distancing themselves, and I couldn't go outside of the group. So I had a long period, 20 years really, of just complete isolation almost.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So that was mainly, and you couldn't get help like outside of the group or talk to anybody?
I did go to therapy, and every time it would always reach a point where the therapist would say, have you ever thought about leaving this religion? And which I know they're not supposed to do, but I had a lot of them do it. And that was always like a switch flipped. And I'm like, oh no, that's the world trying to draw me out. And how could I give up seeing my father?
Right.
And, I never really questioned. It was just, I never grieved him because he was dangled before me like a carrot, because you think Armageddon could be tomorrow. You want it to be the next day, and you pray every night for God to bring it about. So I was just stuck in that state. And a therapist accused me of being dishonest.
Was it a secular therapist?
Yeah, I probably went to, I would say, close to 10, from like 15 to early 30s. And usually they would say, well, they would usually say, well, you're articulate, you make us laugh, whatever. They would say, we don't feel like there's maybe a huge problem. Maybe you just need to leave this group. It always came to that. And then I would always stop going.
Right.
And, I knew something was wrong, but I always thought it was me. And, prayer wasn't working for me, which I interpreted as indicating my, what a sinner I was. How I always thought that the one true God was rejecting me through his people too. I thought like he was essentially, using them to reject me and drive me out. Right.
Yikes. And like you said, with like having that free, like wanting to see your dad again, I could see why that would be, I'm not going to leave this, because you have that hope of being reunited with your father. And that's
100%. Yes. Yeah. And you also can't tell the therapist, hey, I'm in the one true religion. I'm one of the chosen ones. Because I knew how crazy that sounded. So it's crazy that I spent 20 years. I mean, almost, I worked, I played video games, I saw some movies, but essentially it was just, it just all blurs together. And, sorry.
No, don't be sorry. So I have a question regarding like, what does being a Jehovah's Witness mean exactly? So for people who, because a lot of our audience,
I have no idea actually.
Yeah. Could you explain? No, don't be sorry.
Oh, you're fine. This is great. Learning about these cults is fantastic for me.
Yeah, like I know a bit, and our audience might, but just for someone who isn't familiar with it, could you explain some of the key beliefs, Armageddon, chosen ones?
So, so Jehovah's Witnesses. So it's funny because they are about 8.3 million, I think, but they say that pretty much everybody knows them. And once I've gone away, I'll tell people, I'll say, I was in the world's biggest doomsday cult. I was a Jehovah's Witness. They're like, what? That's what they are. People really don't know. So basically, they believe that. I mean, when I was a child, every night I would pray, please bring an end to your enemies, which meant Armageddon. And I was shown depictions of angels and I prayed for God to kill you. I mean, there's no polite way to say I did. And
thanks, man.
I'm sorry. I do feel bad.
No.
I really do.
The prayers weren't answered, so it's all good.
So Jehovah's Witnesses want Armageddon to happen.
No, more than anything.
No. Oh, really? Wow.
No, because everything that is bad is because Satan is controlling the world because he challenged God's sovereignty. So we're supposed to live forever on a paradise earth where all animals are vegetarian. And all your desires will be, granted, and you'll live forever and never grow old after Armageddon. But one of the things I've come to learn is I was taught hatred, but when Jehovah's
say that again.
You kind of froze.
Oh, sorry. I was taught hatred, but told it was love.
Yeah.
And
You know, you said that in an interview, and that's the one quote that stood out to me. And I put it in my phone.
no,
Taught hatred, but told it was love, and that is so true of religion. So
no, it
Well,
is.
like they say, there's no hatred like Christian love. That's like
Yeah.
you nailed it right there.
yeah,
I mean, I'm guilty of this, but many Jehovah's Witnesses are. They'll be out in a neighborhood
Yeah.
and they'll be driving and they'll say, hey, did you see that brick house? After Armageddon, I'm going to go get that house. I mean, so you're really kind of bred to be a sociopath, you know, that you're just going to drag the bodies out and move in like a hermit crab. And that idea existed in my head for decades, and I never thought it was wrong. I mean, because they deserve to die because they didn't serve Jehovah. I mean, it was sad, but I wanted them to die as soon as possible so, you know, I could have a perfect life. My hair would come back. My dad would come back, you know. It's delusional thinking, but they get you because they tell you an example of their cognitive dissonance they maintain is Jehovah's Witnesses are living the best life ever, but they say it isn't the real life.
Mm-hmm.
So anything that would detract from your service and proselytizing, you really need to tone down or stop completely so that you can gain this eternal life.
Right. So I can see a lot of similarities between just being like Christian, because that's what I grew up like evangelical Christian. We were always anticipating the rapture, which is very much, I would say, on par with Armageddon, because we believed in like the 7-year tribulation, which would be hell on earth, and anyone who wasn't a Christian would be basically like put to death. So we were anticipating that. We believed things like, you would get your glorified body. So if you didn't have hair, like you said, you would be anticipating your hair, or if you had health issues, obviously those would be perfected. And we didn't necessarily think, I'll get that person's house, but we talked about like building up our mansions, like you would get your mansion in heaven, and you're so I can relate to so much of what you're saying. It's interesting because we were told, you guys are the ones who are deceived, and we're the one true religion. So it's so, like it's so bizarre how we're just all told, no, they have it wrong, we have it right, and you're told the same thing. So
so does this Armageddon take place on Earth? Because you're saying you would get a certain house. So the non-believers would basically die off, and then
they will all be killed, not by us. We'll be protected, but they will all be exterminated. And so when I was 5, a book came out called the Revelation book, and it had depictions of Armageddon. And those are my earliest memories.
Holy crap.
That book, like there's one with horses riding in the blood is up to almost the horses, like here on the horse, its legs. And then, you know, I would hear things in church because you're never separated. So before kindergarten, you know, I heard about like the birds of heaven devouring the bodies of the dead. I mean, incest, rape, all of these things, because we read the Bible, you know. I remember I asked my mom when I was very little, because I'd heard it in church or meeting. I said, what's bestiality? And she said, oh, well, you know what sex is? And I said, yeah. And she said, well, like if someone does that with an animal, which I thought was hilarious, because I remember I was like, what, like a chicken? And
like a chicken?
Because
you're a kid. You're a kid. Like, yeah.
And my son is 5 years old. Like, I would not be like, hey, let daddy tell you about, incest. Like, it's psychotic, the things that I was exposed to. And cults have this false sense of knowledge, but I always thought, I was born into that. I was isolated in it. It was all I knew. And then once I've gotten out, I hear stories like yours or Mormons or all these cults. It's all almost the same story, just tweaked a little bit.
Yeah.
But you have to get distance to realize that it's not unique and just how wrong it is.
Yeah. So how did you get the distance? How did you realize it is wrong?
So the were really in me. And when COVID began, I was in a bad marriage. I thought COVID was Armageddon. And I was
that's like all the Christians. Okay, go on.
COVID is what we had been planning for. I'm like, oh, this is it. And I was binge drinking really, really bad. You're allowed to drink, and so I wound up in jail. And so I didn't even know how I had got there. They had to tell me. And so I was in jail 77 days. And then I was homeless 3 days. And then I found myself in sober living. I couldn't live with my family anymore. I was divorced. And, I knew that absolutely no one on the planet gave a shit. Sorry, I didn't ask if I should cook
It's
first.
okay.
But no one cared.
God, language, man.
At one point, I was raised to be polite.
It's okay.
But I was under a bridge and I was terrified. And I was like, is this my life? Is this and I'm like, I want to, I wanted to apologize and fix things, but I couldn't. So I found myself in a sober living house.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's like burning yourself on a stove. I'm like, oh, well, yeah. I mean, I was drinking, before I went to hard liquor, I was drinking 24 beer a night, then like a fifth a night. I mean, I wanted to black out because I was terrified. Everything was wrong.
Oh, wow. And
so I felt very much like, oh, I learned my lesson. I'm not going to drink anymore. I mean, no issues. I don't care. But AA kept telling me, I couldn't do it. I needed God. Mm-hmm. And AA was very, very similar to being a Jehovah's Witness.
Mm-hmm.
They foster codependency on the group. There's an us versus them mentality.
Yep.
The mindless recitation. And when I would ask questions, I would be told, you think too much. Which outside of that, I've never been told don't think. I mean, Jehovah's Witnesses don't trust your mind. But it was like, this is familiar, but why does it feel familiar?
Yeah.
Right.
So when I got my phone back, I Googled cult tactics. And I thought, okay, I'm just going to look at these and see how many, if any, match. And every single one, ding, 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 ding. And I was like, holy shit, this is everything that happened to me from birth. I mean, just every single thing I found. Even I found a thing on, I think it was in Chinese camps in World War II, was about mind control.
Right.
And even that, all of that fit perfectly.
Like the bite model of
yes.
Yeah, that one, right?
Yes.
By Stephen Hassan.
Everything I found just perfectly described it. And then when I'm in AA, I'm like, well, I don't believe in God and I can do it myself. They really treated me like I was a terrible person. Oof. And then I didn't want to pray because I didn't feel comfortable. Well, they would pull me into prayer circles. So when it was over, I would say Nema, which is the satanic amen, amen backwards. And like it would be over and I would say like, hail Satan. I really got angry because like one guy, he said, you need God. And I was like, and I said, I mean, I pretty much, I cussed out as God, all of them. I'm like, no, I don't believe in them. I don't, I would say I was a pastafarian, that I was praying to noodles.
Ramen.
Yeah. But they just hated me. And I was the only one staying sober. I think I'm going on 3 years now.
Good for you.
Congratulations.
That's wonderful.
I work in a bar, they told me I couldn't do that. And I was fed up with being told what I could do and why. And you don't know shit about me. I just really was pissed off. So once I moved into a place where there wasn't nearly as much oversight, that's when I started writing. And I knew that I wanted to. I know other Jehovah's Witnesses have told their stories, but for me, they really criminalize grief and mistreat people with depression, if they just pray, if they just do more service.
Yes.
And once that really became clear, it really pissed me off because I talk about in Mentally Diseased, 2 guys I grew up with, we had a building and 2 congregations met there, but 2 guys shot themselves within like the same summer. No one cared. Nobody said,
Jeez.
it was just, that's what happens when you stray from Jehovah. Nobody cared. And
Wow.
I engaged in a lot of self-harm and suicide attempts growing up, and not like half-hearted ones where I told people, like very violent ones where I should have died several times and I didn't. And my mom, when I was in jail, did her part to estrange me from my child. Like, I lost my car, I lost everything.
Oh my
So
God.
I see my son, but for the first couple years, I barely saw him, and where I was staying, it wasn't a safe environment. And then he told me they have propaganda cartoons, and when
Yes, I've seen some of them.
yeah, well, he told me that my mom was showing him them. He mentioned the boy Caleb, and I mean,
oh, that must have been so horrible to hear.
yeah, well, he spends more time with her than me, and so I was like, because my father died when I was 13. I barely remember him. I don't know my mother. So I was like, well, I mean, when I wrote, I didn't write to evoke pity or sympathy either. I just wanted to matter-of-factly tell things. And there are times when I said really rude things to people. I mean, I don't try and paint myself as a hero. I say and do some nasty things, but, I feel like it was important to share that, and even the title, that's what they call people who are baptized and leave, mentally diseased.
Wow.
Which is pretty harsh.
That is extremely harsh.
Yeah.
That's really awful language to refer to someone who is of, like, no matter who they are, to call someone mentally diseased.
Well, they dehumanize everybody. Everybody who's not part of the group, even you would see, they might look and see somebody with facial piercings or green hair, and and I've heard people say, no, I'm not going to try and witness to them. But if I really, if I knew the truth, why would I not try and save people? But they're a very judgmental group, and I mean, they just have no self-awareness, and they're so controlled. For me, I don't know if I ever would have woke up, because for my dad, I mean, the hooks were just in me so deep. I really wanted my father back.
Yeah. So did you go through an extra layer of grief once you realized that this was not, this was a cult and that you weren't going to see your dad again? Or was there more of a relief feeling knowing that, you didn't have to live under the thumb of the Jehovah's Witnesses?
Well, it was multifaceted, because I grieved my father for the first time, but I also knew that, I mean, based on what I know of him, he wouldn't like me or talk to me if he were alive.
Right.
Because my mother doesn't. When my father was dying of cancer, they offered him a blood transfusion. He turned it down. He wanted himself for Watchtower.
Right.
And the thing with exiting a cult for me is just, sometimes I'll have realizations about a single moment, and then I start going back to my earliest memories to reframe and reprocess it, because you're so circumscribed and contrived if you're born in. You just don't develop into whoever you would be.
Yeah. But you also have a bit of an understanding for people who are in these cults that get out too. So not everyone has that advantage as well, and you're able to sympathize with them.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
It for me, I would say probably in Indiana, I know about 500 to 1,000 people pretty well in my approximately 40 years. And I don't know a single Jehovah's Witness that ever left and spoke out. I know people, but another thing they call people who leave and stop are agents of Satan. And that's really
that's what they say about Christians too.
What?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe some people I grew up with, might. I don't know. I mean, I didn't write it to try and save people. I don't know. I was never very popular anyway, but I don't have to save them. I mean, I could help if I could help them, I would. But up until that point, when their mind cracks open, I'm the enemy. You know, I'm worse than Hitler, Charles Manson, because they died. So they
Just 'cause you
take
left.
things, and they never knew the truth. Like, that's the mentality.
God.
I mean, for Jehovah's Witnesses, there is nothing on the planet as evil as someone who speaks out against the truth.
Wow.
Which it's a weird feeling to know over 8 million people, you know, think you are an agent of Satan. It's psychotic, you know, but
Yeah.
I had those thoughts for a long time too, so I understand them.
Mm-hmm.
We want to take a second to say hi to everybody in the chat. If you have a question for our guest, you know, you can type it out. Just type question and then type your question, and we'll select them at the end and ask our friend over here, Micah. I wanted to ask about your deconstruction process. It's always different for everybody, and you kind of already touched on it a little bit. What was the start of it when your father passed? But after that, how did you end up, you know, losing the faith completely, or the God belief? Was it what am I saying? Like a process? Was it just like a Jenga tower falling like a house of cards quickly, or was it like very slow?
Well, so as I was growing up, I heard numerous times, avoid independent thinking. Do not trust your heart, for it is treacherous.
Well, that's a red flag.
So, yeah, I mean, so when I woke up or whatever, you know, for me, I was like, you know, do I even like the things that I'm thinking? Like, I like mint ice cream, but do I really? I mean, I really just, because I had a lot of free time, and I was an only child, and I've always kind of been an introvert.
Okay.
But so when I was out of jail, because I did write a poem in jail about when my mom, when I wrote her for help and she filed a no contact order against me and painted me as a monster, my mother killed my faith in God. Because I had prayed to him and asked for help from them. And I was like, no, even if I am serving Satan, I'll go with him. I think he would treat me better. I knew it wasn't right, but I couldn't research. So then when I was out, I just went through everything and I looked up how cults operate.
Yeah.
And for me, really writing really helped me a lot. I probably did 10 to 12 edits of my book myself before I hired an editor. And it's actually the first book in a trilogy that I'm working.
We were going to ask you about that. So.
Yeah.
So, well, you know, for me, I think it's kind of like exposure therapy. The first time I went on a date with a woman, you know, I really felt like I was doing, I mean, I didn't think I was doing anything wrong, but like my body was like having an anxiety attack.
Right.
And I was like, this is so weird. Or the first time, so I published Mentally Diseased on my birthday. It was my 40th birthday, the first birthday I'd ever celebrated.
Wow.
And at work, they got me a cupcake and they sang to me, and I tried not to cry. But, you know, like in that moment, it really felt wrong because you've had these little actions demonized for decades.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's I don't know. I know some people have had a lot of luck with therapy, but I really never did growing up. So I've gone to therapy, but I like to just kind of research, and I've been working on, I suppose, trying to develop myself and pursue the things I want. One of the things I've always loved is words. I always wanted to write a book. And so, yeah, I mean, you know, my memoir is a good first step, I think.
Yeah.
That's freaking cool.
Writing can be very healing. We have a question from former to free XJW. He says, would you be willing to read one of your poems from your book, Author's Choice?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. So this is a hardcover copy of my book.
Nice.
I hired an ex-Jehovah's Witness artist to paint the cover.
It's
me as a little boy, and
an amazing cover, I have to say. Like, it's incredible.
She sent me the painting. She's Australian. Her name is Sarah Riches. I think it's Riches. I always worry about her last name, but she's a really great artist.
That's awesome, man.
Thanks. Well, with my second and third book, I've already found 2 other XJW authors who are going to design those covers too. If I could, I would like to read you the poem I wrote. I was looking at apostate material and I saw something that I couldn't reconcile.
Okay.
And I really knew something was wrong. So, okay. An oversimplification redundant with truth. Certainly, this is the fulcrum of salvation. We are not a wretched brethren, no coven meant to covet sins. Brothers and sisters, alleged equality. Sisters and brothers, elevated laity. Huddle and circle as they circle the wagons. The prize of perfection flaking away in deafening whispers pass through clenched teeth. I am a vessel, too stained to be vestal, no matter the path it's banked by a devil. Double back from an acrimonious path, bleached with contrition, fuck the past. Obedience is obsequious, mistaken masochism. Know the horsemen are closing in. Witch hunts tarnish those judging sin. Evil is abstract, and long-term victimization can lead to defending the wicked. These things are sick. I am sickened. I am awake.
Wow. That is powerful.
Thank you.
Damn.
That is so
awesome.
good.
Thank you.
You're a good writer. Wow.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. Well, one of the things, I know some people really like to break down the theology of the group they grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, once you know it, one thing is a lie, it reflects all the other lies. So I don't like doing that. And one of the things I've noticed with like Heaven's Gate and these other cult leaders, they all have this slow, intentional, monotonous way of speaking. Yeah. And I feel like it's affecting me, whether or not I know how. So, but I do want to interact with the community. So like in my book, there are 12 chapters because 12 is a biblical number and 12 steps, you know. But I put a poem before each chapter. And then I had about 100 poems that I wrote from 2002 to 2022 that I didn't use. So I've compiled them. And I'm going to call that book Gangrenous Speeches because they say to resist apostates' gangrenous speeches. And then I'm also writing a horror novella set during COVID where a member of the true religion becomes the Antichrist. And
what?
Oh, that sounds so good.
You heard it first here on Skeptic Haven. This is freaking cool.
Well, that's really good because I think we were all waiting for the Antichrist during COVID. When we
were 100%.
I was.
Well, and it took me years.
Sorry, we so the question is, it took me years for me to start talking about JW after leaving. So how long did it take for you? So after
I mean, I was just like, I was in jail and I was like, I think I was in a cult.
Yeah.
It was like,
and then you're like, I need to start talking about it. Is that gathering.
I'm probably too forthcoming, but at the same time, I put evil out into the world. So
that's how
I feel like people deserve to know, you know?
Yeah.
I think, you know, too many XJWs are worried about governing each other or how you deal with it. There's a lot of crap in that community. It's frustrating because, you know, we're not all the same. We have a shared trauma, but we're all different. It affected all of us, you know, differently.
Right.
Even one of my friends, she wrote a comic book called Cult Girls. She's an XJW. Her name is Natalie Grand. And when I was reading it, I really noticed, or she talked about how the little girls felt because they were treated as inferior. And it really bothered me. I was like, man, I was part of that. And how many countless girls did I make feel inferior, even though I never really even processed or thought of it, you know?
Yeah.
So I feel like, you know, there are a lot of different voices to contribute and a lot of people, you know, suffered in different ways. And I just think it's important to share it and talk about it and, you know, not govern people as long as people aren't being terrible, you know, but.
Yeah. Now imagine that living this cult is so difficult in a way that you basically have to reframe your whole life because you've been so used to this control that you have to relearn how to live your own life, right?
Yeah, and Jehovah's Witnesses, every aspect of their life is controlled.
Yeah.
The spouse they choose, their clothing, their car, how active they are in the group. And when I was growing up, it was church 3 times a week.
Oh.
And then you had to prepare. That was usually an hour another night and a day or two of field service, door to door. It was just exhausting. When I look back, I did not have a childhood. So some days
No.
I'll just be laying in bed in sweatpants and I'm like, oh, this is glorious. I don't have to be anywhere. I don't have to read scriptures or wear a tie. I can just be lazy.
Yeah.
It really, I don't think the person who wakes up from a cult can ever be that person again. I think that's the beginning point. Or, I mean, if you want to stagnate, but I just don't feel like you can, because I've had people just give me common decency. I mean, common decency, like look me in the eyes and say, hey, how are you?
Right.
And it's too much for me to process, because I spent decades going to the Kingdom Hall and no one looking at me, no one talking to me.
Wow.
I mean, there were times I felt like I was haunting that church. And I have a bad habit of not acknowledging people or with social cues. And it's like I was conditioned in a lot of ways to be that way. So yeah, it's hard because you do have to question absolutely everything about yourself. And what I would like to encourage people to do is to pursue your goals. If you want to do something, go for it. I mean, I think
allow yourself to do it, right?
I mean, I think it's cool that I can Google myself and it says author and my son can look at it,
that's freaking cool.
That's a really cool legacy, and it's a dream fulfilled that I always wanted to be an author. So
that's amazing. I actually have a question regarding the intro that Beth wrote for you. It said that you describe yourself as an iconoclast. So could you maybe elaborate on that a bit? Because when I looked up the meaning of that, it really piqued my interest. And
so someone who burns religious imagery, I believe.
Okay.
And if you look on my Twitter, there's a picture of me in one of my
burning Bible,
and I'm holding a burning Bible.
Okay.
So, and I'm posing with my friend from my job, Daisy. And actually, books are really hard to get to burn because it was just lighter. The book didn't burn at all. Like I wanted to, but
great photo. Great photo.
Yes. Okay.
But it was cold that day. So basically, someone who destroys religious symbols. I mean, the Bible. It really. I hoped that it would stir up controversy and I would get people really mad at me. But one guy, he said, "Well, I would have had some harsh things to say, but now I'm a Christian." And I was like, "Oh, so forgive me. You have to." Like I've read your book. Like, I don't have to care at all. Yeah, but it actually a friend of mine, he messaged me and he was like, "Dude, you're an iconoclast." And I was like, "What is that?" And I looked it up and I was like, "That's cool. I'm gonna put that up there."
I love it because the meaning I read says a person who attacks settled beliefs or institutions, a person who destroys.
I do that on TikTok.
Images or opposes their veneration, and I was like, okay, well then consider me an iconoclast too.
Well, and
by speaking out and tearing things down, So
well, and like for Watchtower, my father, maybe blood would have given me a few more days with him. Watchtower took my father. Watchtower turned my mother against me. They took all my other family. They tainted my marriage from the beginning.
Wow.
The fact that you were going to push those disgusting cartoons on my 5-year-old.
Yeah.
I mean, that's war for me. Like, I hope the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses knows about me. Because, like,
I'm sure they do.
Well, I was anonymous until my book came out. And then, so I have Twitter, Reddit, TikTok, Instagram, and I just like to post memes mocking religion and
same.
and also talk about my experience and my beliefs. I mean, the one sad thing I think is you have so many people who have left who just think they don't have merit. And I mean,
Yep.
or they're like, I shouldn't talk about it, but I think you should, because there's still children being born into
Absolutely.
it every single day. And they have access where they can actually look things up online and not have to worry about being seen, you know, at a library or anything. So, you know, everyone I have met obviously hasn't been, you know, we haven't gelled with, but I've met some really great people. I even met one friend from Florida online, and it was really cool because instantaneously I felt like I knew them.
Yeah.
I mean, we had talked before, you know, but it's just a unique thing, because a lot of people will tell me congratulations on getting out of a cult, which I know they mean well, but I didn't want to get out. I wanted it to be true. You know,
right.
It's just so weird. And I don't know, for me, writing, like when so like my third book, Despicable, I try and address like kind of people having a messiah complex, because I think that's instilled in you in these groups, because you know, you think you're one of the chosen ones, you think you're involved in this divinely orchestrated thing with angels overseeing you, and if you didn't do it, the rocks would cry out. You know, it's rooted in delusion 100%. But
absolutely is.
Yeah. And for me, I really enjoy being sacrilegious. Like I was like, you know what? I said, so there's a website where you can advertise it for editors, all this stuff. And I put, like, I said, I'm writing a story about the Antichrist. It has all kinds of different types of abuse in families, suicide, a serial killer, and all these people excited. And I'm interviewing them, and they're really excited. And I was like, oh, interesting. Because when I grew up, you know, you thought movies like The Omen or The Exorcist brought demons into the room.
Yes, that's what I believed. 100%.
I remember watching scary movies and then praying to God that the demons wouldn't overtake me. So for me to write a story where a character loosely, I mean, it's fiction, and where that's the Antichrist attacking this fake religion I've made. It's very empowering, you know, and it's not about Satan worship or being evil. It's just doing things that I never could because I thought they were so taboo. You know, it's exposure therapy, I think.
Yeah. Going back to your story about like watching movies and thinking the demons would come. I remember going on the ride at Disneyland, the Haunted Mansion, and at the end of the ride, they say when you're getting off, they say something about a spirit leaving with you as you exit the ride. And I was like, oh my God. And after that, I thought that I literally had a demon with me forever. And I was praying and praying. And I ended up having like kind of like a bit of anxiety. Well, I've always dealt with anxiety, but I attributed it for a couple of years where I was like, it's because I went on that ride. And every time we went to Disneyland, I didn't go on that ride again.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, it's because of that ride.
I never even went on that ride when I went to Disneyland. My parents were like, no. I think in Kings Island in Louisville, there was like a Scooby-Doo ride. I never did that.
Oh, and I wasn't allowed to watch Scooby-Doo.
Why? You know why?
Because it was like spirits.
Are you for real?
It never was. It was always an old man, which blew me away when I watched it. There was never a ghost.
Yeah.
I couldn't eat Lucky Charms because my mom said, mom said she said luck's not real, and I was like, yeah, but marshmallows are. That's all I want.
What?
Marshmallows.
I don't care about luck.
Yeah. We didn't say like lucky or luck. We would say like blessing or something.
Oh.
Yeah.
I couldn't say luck.
Yeah, we didn't say luck.
Yeah, I couldn't say luck or all kinds of.
I didn't watch Smurfs.
Bless you?
Smurfs? Oh, I didn't watch Smurfs.
Yeah. Me either. Yeah. Terrible.
No.
Oh my gosh.
There's an urban legend that I've talked to other XJWs from around the world, and they've heard it. That somebody brought a Smurf toy into their church, the Kingdom Hall, and it got up and started walking during the meeting. And I heard that story when I was a kid and thought it was real.
Oh my gosh. Okay, look at all the similarities between like my upbringing that was not Jehovah's Witness and yours. And I was always told that you were deceived, but we have a lot of similarities.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Wow.
I think it's all about control.
It is.
Because there's so much overlap. Even I was watching on HBO, it's about, I think it's called The Way Down. It's about a weight loss church.
Oh, okay.
And the leader really, her hair keeps getting bigger and bigger.
I've seen
blonde
her.
lady,
Yeah.
Chamberlain, and it's really fascinating. But even as kooky as that is, because she's like, you can only eat when your stomach growls, otherwise give your hunger to God. And it was crazy, but it was so familiar to what I grew up in. You know, even when I watch Scientology, I'm just obsessed with cults that aren't mine. Mine hurts too much, but other ones, it's like close enough.
Yeah, that's great. I was so afraid of being in a cult growing up because I always would say to my mom, people who are in cults don't think or know they're in cults. So how do I know we're not in a cult? I would say Jehovah's Witnesses don't think they're in cult, but they're in a cult. Mormons don't think they're in a cult. How do we know we're not in a cult? And she would just go, I don't know. Like and she'd get kind of like a pet, like, I don't know. And I'm like, yeah, me either. And then that's all we would do is just be like, but we were.
It's so sad because like growing up, I was told, prove to yourself that you're in the right religion. But the only way I could prove it is by looking in their documents that they had written that were guaranteed to reinforce them.
Right?
Yes, circular logic.
And then, I mean, it was probably a year or two ago when I was like, oh, well, that doesn't make any sense. I'm like, how was I duped for that? It really makes you feel stupid.
Yeah.
But of course, they prey on vulnerable people. I mean, I don't know a single person who became a Jehovah's Witness when their life was going good. Not one. It was all disasters. And I remember even, I was probably 21, around that age, and they said we should start preaching in graveyards while someone's at a tombstone, which is very predatory. I told my mom, I said, I refused to do that because it really seemed in poor taste, even though I still believed, it was the truth. But yeah.
Oh my gosh.
You mean like while the people were grieving their loved ones and visiting the tomb?
Your tears are falling on the tombstone of their grandma. You're like, hey, do you want to know about Jehovah? Like, that is so wrong.
No.
So wrong.
Goodness.
See, that tells you that they have insight as to the way that they're able to indoctrinate people is when they're at their lowest.
Exactly.
And that is really disgusting,
It is.
And for them, I think it was some point after 2000, they came out with jw.org. And I really think that was the beginning of their downfall because you have this group of men, they're the governing body. And when you might see them in a magazine, okay, I can believe God is directing them. I guess that, that you can suspend your disbelief. But then when I was seeing videos of them and they're really goofy or saying really bizarre things, there's one, he's no longer serving. Nobody, I don't know why, maybe somebody does, but he was talking about men in tight pants and how the homosexuals, how designed them, were the ones that were attracted to you. And I just remember watching that and I was like, like this.
I'm wearing skinny jeans right now.
Yeah.
Damn it.
It seems crazy to me. Like it just, it seemed really hateful. And even if you don't agree with, for a long time, I thought gay people deserve death. But I thought if you ate a birthday cupcake, you deserved death. I just thought everyone deserved death except Jehovah's Witnesses.
Wow. That's so crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. The more exposure they get, I'm hoping the more their reputation will be destroyed because, I mean, they protect pedophiles. They do a lot of harm, but somehow they just have this really good reputation, or better than a lot of other.
Well, I know what country is it that they're getting defunded? They're not going to get any funding from the government anymore. I forget what it is, but
I think that's the Ukraine related to them shunning.
Might be. I can't remember, but I read it in the news somewhere. Tells you my retention skills. But
Is this true? They look through the paper for people who have died to go visit their family members?
My mom does that. My mom.
What?
No.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And do I have any door-to-door trips that stand out?
Yeah, I wanted to know about that, but finish your last thought about what you're going to say, but your mom goes to.
Oh, well, I just know, she'll read obituaries can't be out that long, and she will get their address and be like, "Hi, my husband died." She means it.
Mm-hmm.
She's a very controlled drone of that group.
Yeah. Oh.
But I always thought that was in bad taste. I wouldn't.
For sure.
I mean,
that takes a lot of guts to.
Yeah. Well, they usually get the return address is the hall. They don't give their personal one.
Right.
I remember.
I got a thing in the mail not too long ago.
I just got the same one.
Memorial?
A handwritten. Yeah, I just got one the other day.
Like, what is the key to a happy family? And it's a bunch of BS.
Yeah, I actually was going to
They're
bring
all
it.
dressed like it's the 1950s.
Well, you can't really see it, but
yeah, the women in all the pictures, like the women are in the kitchen or bringing lemonade to the men, and they're all wearing khaki. It's very bizarre.
My husband never wears khaki.
No, it's a horrible color. Like, yeah.
So back. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry.
I was just going to say, do you have any door-to-door trips? Memory? Is that what you were thinking of? Yeah.
I lived kind of in southern Indiana for a while.
Okay.
And I remember one time we went out and there were just shotgun shells everywhere. Like 40 of them just strewn everywhere. And we're going up to knock real early. And I was like, well, this seems mildly dangerous. But
maybe
also,
we won't.
at that time, I remember knocking and thinking, if they pull a gun on me, I don't care if they shoot me because I'll have died loyal and this life will be over and I'll wake up in paradise.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
And
yeah, I could see that.
one of the things I remember when I went to grade school, because I was told that's my territory, and because their parents might not open the door. So I remember this little boy or girl, I don't remember which, but a classmate said, "Oh yeah, the stork brought my parents a new little, baby brother or sister." And I go, "Your parents are liars. They had sex."
Oh my gosh.
I didn't know any better. At the time, I really thought it was terrible their parents would lie to them.
Yeah.
But
well, you are definitely someone who's after the truth, and look where you are. So that's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I don't know. At least, I mean, I don't think my son will ever join. I want my writing to be something he can always have, and I don't know. It's just sad because, I know my mom will shun me till she dies.
Oh,
I mean,
I'm so sorry.
It's maybe 1% chance she wouldn't. And because in her mind, her God wouldn't kill me if I wasn't, a horrible sinner that deserved it.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things, the Jehovah's Witness God is psychotic because their teaching last I knew is in paradise, my father will be resurrected, but him and my mother can't date. They can just be platonic friends because the resurrected can't remarry.
Okay.
And my mom's
that's a very specific rule there, huh?
Yeah. My mom's never been on a date since her husband died when I was 13 in 96. So she's waiting on that. And also, she believes that her God will allow her to have memories of me, and she will remember that he murdered me, but he will take the pain away attached to that memory. What a psychopath. That's like Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I served while having those thoughts in my head. That's the thing. People talk about waking people up. I don't believe you can wake people up from that. It just has to happen.
Yeah, I agree.
It's so sad that a belief, regards life as dirty rags and takes away your freaking humanity. That is so disgusting to me.
And will come between your
and destroy your family, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead. I want to hear what you wanted to say.
Oh, I was just going to say that, they don't care because they think essentially the ends justify the means, and unspeakably horrible things are done or covered up. I've talked to people that say, when they were a child, they said this brother touched me, raped me, weighed on Jehovah. They didn't do anything. And then the person just kept raping other kids in the congregation.
God.
One of the things, I have a lot of repressed memories. I have barely any before my dad died. But I remembered it was in this room here. When I was little, there was an elder that he would flick my earlobe. He would flick the earlobe of all the little boys, not the little girls. And when I was in my 20s, my mom mentioned him and said, when I was very little, someone accused him of molesting a child and almost ruined his reputation. Now, I don't know anything for certain, but just I was like, oh God, I lived among monsters. I was raised to be a terrible person. And it's really a lot to unlearn. It's hard because I'll see gay people, which I have nothing against them.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment I'm like, oh, they're gay, God's going to kill them. And then I have to be like, no, I don't think that anymore. But it's happening at like a reptilian brain level.
Yeah. You have to reprogram your thinking each time and catch yourself, huh?
You just have reactions and then you're like, oh, I don't believe that.
Yeah. And after so many years, it's going to take time to just stop that thought process and be like, oh, no, that's not what I mean. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So do you celebrate holidays now? You said you had your birthday with work, but.
And then for Christmas, I had my son and actually an ex-Jehovah's Witness on Facebook. I really don't know them that well. I don't know what I was talking about in a group, but they asked for my address and they sent me a little Christmas tree and decorations and a gift for me and for my son. And that was really overwhelming. And, I celebrate Christmas. The whole time I was thinking, am I doing this right? Because I just didn't know. But that was really cool that she sent me stuff. So I felt like I had, guidelines and I've met really kind people who, on holidays, sometimes we video chatted or, the XJWs really have been my support. And then at my job as well. I work with a lot of people that are younger, but a bunch of them bought my book and, some have helped me promote it and stuff.
Which is awesome.
It's crazy because like I said, when I heard my editor, I said, I want you to know I used to pray to my God to kill you. I said, and I don't mean that I said, I know it's ridiculous, but to not be honest would be a disservice to what this group is doing to its members and to others.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, regarding your book, you have a lot of 5-star reviews on Amazon and Goodreads, people who are just loving it, saying how powerful it is. It's emotional. It's heartbreaking. What a great writer you are. How talented you are. Just the courage you had to open up about your story and expose this cult. So I know that I've already decided I'm going to read it on my Kindle. I have to.
Nice.
Especially when it's someone's memoir, and after meeting them too, and hearing their story, it's like, okay, now I want to know more about it and in depth. So everyone who's watching, I really encourage you to go to Amazon, or if you have a Kindle, get his book and read it. And if it is a trilogy, then that's exciting.
Yeah. So let me see. The 6th month, January, February, March, April, May, June. So June 10th is Gangrenous Speeches, and Despicable is going to come out on December 10th. So
so we don't have long to wait.
Well,
that's awesome, dude.
Thank you. Well, 3 books, 6 months apart, because I'm going to imbue it with satanic imagery as much as I can. And if you're going to call me mentally diseased and despicable and say to resist my gangrenous speeches, I'm going to own all those things. And when you Google them, I want to be the first result.
Yes, you do that. I love that.
I'm defiant. I always got told I was a rebel. And I want the governing body to say, who is this bald asshole and why won't he go away and shut up?
Love it.
Has anyone thought to mail them a copy of your book to Bethel in New York?
I've thought about it. What's interesting is I have a friend who has family in Bethel high up, and they said they have a list of high-ranking apostates.
Okay.
They have like a team in Bethel that monitor, even though they tell their members to not look at it because demonic influence will warp their mind. So I don't have a way to confirm, but I hope I'm on that list. Like,
Ooh, I hope so too.
I hope so too.
I want to
That's
be
awesome.
the enemy of a massive cult. Like,
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
because I think that's cool as hell. My son
Fuck
can
yeah.
say, my dad challenged a cult.
That is
Boom.
a legacy right
Yeah.
there.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So I wanted to share a resource with everybody. I don't if you're not familiar with Recovering from Religion. It's an awesome nonprofit organization. And they have a hotline, 184 I doubt it. That's the actual number, 184 I doubt it. It's staffed by 24-hour volunteers. For anybody who's doubting their faith or needs the support, talk to somebody about it. They're fantastic. And you can also find them on recoveringfromreligion.org. And they also have the Secular Therapy Project, which is a registry of, secular therapists that are not affiliated with any type of religious organization. So fantastic work that they do. Highly recommend it.
Really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So could you tell us and tell our audience where they can find you? Are you on social media? I know you mentioned a few places. So where can we follow you?
So I'm on Twitter. It's JW_IN_AA. That's my username on TikTok and Instagram as well.
Oh,
Ooh.
perfect.
I'll add you on TikTok.
Okay,
I'll follow you on Instagram.
And I do get on Reddit sometimes, but
it's pretty anonymous on there too, ish. Yeah.
I think a lot of times on Reddit, people are just waking up because I've posted stuff on Twitter and Reddit, and usually people on Reddit, I'll anger them somehow, and I don't mean to.
Okay.
I just feel like it's more toxic. I don't know. But I'm on there, and then that's really cool about that phone number. I wish I'd known about that, because I really think people should talk about their suffering, because for me, talking about it helps me not, act on it in certain things.
Yeah.
But I'm on there, and Mentally Diseased can be found on barnesandnoble.com, walmart.com.
Nice.
The hardcover, paperback, and digital are all on amazon.com. And I have it set up as the first book in the Apostacie trilogy, and I've been talking about it to hold myself accountable, because the second book is already compiled and the artist is working, and then the third one is mostly written. I'm still hammering out. It's different world building, as opposed to just telling what happened. So
right. Perfect. Well, when everyone reads it, make sure you give it a 5-star review.
Is it available on Audible? Our friend Neil is asking. Do you know?
Not yet. I have had a friend of mine reach out to me. I don't exactly know how I would go about doing that, though.
Okay.
So, I've looked into it a little. It's only been out 3 months. It's weird. Sometimes it feels like it's been out a lot longer, but I've just been trying to connect and also work and, see my son and all that.
Yeah. Perfect. Well,
thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. So, Baph, where can we find you?
You can find me.
Your favorite app?
My favorite application of all time, TikTok. Total dumpster fire. It might get banned at some point because Neta is jealous. But if you have that horrible application, you can look me up as Baphometal.666. And I am also a co-host on my own podcast called The Burning Eden Podcast. Satire and blasphemy. Go check it out. We would love to have you, Micah, as well.
Yes.
You can curse all you want. We're not even monetized. Yeah.
And then you can.
What about you, Stacy? Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead, Micah.
No, it's just funny because sometimes I'll make TikToks and then I'm like, oh God, I'm 40 years old making TikToks. I really am judging myself right now.
Oh, don't. I'm almost 40 and I'm on TikTok. So you can find me on TikTok, but I'm not that active on there, but mostly on Instagram. So I'm going to follow you on Instagram and then.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I added you on TikTok. So
yeah,
let's be friends.
Yes. And then I am also here every week with Baph, hosting a wonderful secular soapbox with wonderful guests that is a lot of fun. And we just want to thank our, I'll get there. Oh, okay. I'll get there now. So don't forget that we are having an episode of Noah's Flood Debunked with Aaron Raw and Nat, 7:30 p.m. Central.
Tomorrow.
I believe that is tomorrow. Yes,
Yeah.
Thank you. So don't forget to come back for that. Subscribe and hit the bell so you're notified when that is on. We also have a bunch of other shows every week that you would most likely be interested in, because we have a lot of great content. So a Sunny Spot on Thursdays, The Global Atheist on Saturday, and then Women's Atheist Unload on Saturday. So please subscribe to our channel. And we would also invite you to become a Patreon at patreon.com/skeptichaven. And thank you so much to our patrons. We have Tara S., Rion, Deneen Murphy, Dan D., Shannon Gray, The Bible Says What, Kathy Cotton, Cindy Plaza, Sunny Shell, Aaron Coalson, and Phil Calderone.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you to everyone for being here in the chat, for interacting, and to our wonderful guests. Micah, thank you so much for sharing your story and for just opening up to us. And it was so great meeting you, and I look forward to speaking with you again, hopefully. And anything else you'd like to just share before we say goodbye? Or
I would just say, hopefully, if you have a story, if you're comfortable, of course, share it. Don't think it doesn't have merit, because I've had people reach out to me on multiple platforms and tell me they really touched me, and or I really touched them and with my writing. And that's just, it's cool to help people who are trying to heal.
Totally. Talk about it. Find a community. Find a platform, Although TikTok is trash, there is actually a very good community of ex-JWs. There really is.
There is.
So a big shout out to our friend Dr. Time Waster and Ryan. They're both on TikTok. Also go follow them. They're ex-JWs.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, thank you so much, and good night to everyone. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Adios.